My sister and I share a two-story mother-daughter house, designed with two separate kitchens. Hers is downstairs, and mine is upstairs. She spends most of her time at her boyfriend's place about 20 miles away, so I'm usually home alone. Even though I'm 30 years old, I'd be lying if I said the solitude didn't occasionally get to me. One evening, I was alone in my living room watching a scary movie. My apartment has an open floor plan, meaning the living room, dining area, and kitchen all blend into one large space. The couch sits in the middle of the room, leaving my back exposed to the dark expanse behind me. It's not the most comforting setup for watching horror movies in the dark, but I stuck it out, relying on the glow of the TV to keep the shadows at bay. Every so often, I'd glance over my shoulder, feeling just a little too aware of the emptiness behind me. After the movie ended, I went through my usual routine, brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and went to bed. I drifted off quickly, only to wake up abruptly around 1 a.m. I wasn't sure what had woken me until I heard it, a voice coming from downstairs. It sounded like my sister's, clear and familiar, as if she was inside the house. She wasn't shouting for me to let her in, but I could hear her calling out, though I couldn't make out the words. Still half asleep, I figured she must have come home early and needed something. I climbed out of bed, groggy and confused, and shuffled into the dark hallway. Flipping on the light, I made my way to the stairs. Her voice came again, calling my name this time. I called back, "What is it?" and started descending the stairs. The lower level was pitch black, and I fumbled for the light switch in the foyer, but couldn't find it. Feeling around in the dark, I moved toward her kitchen and finally found a switch. The overhead light flickered on, casting a dim glow that gradually brightened to reveal nothing. Her living room and kitchen were empty. I checked her bedroom, but it was just as vacant. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing faintly. No answer. Then, as I turned to leave her bedroom, I heard a distinct thud behind me. Something had fallen. My heart raced as I spun around, staring into the room I had just confirmed was empty. Panicked, I bolted upstairs like a frightened kid, locked myself in my room, and tried calling her. She didn't answer. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was a dream or some kind of sleep-deprived hallucination. Eventually, exhaustion took over and I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke to a text from her. "Why did you call me so late last night?" I replied, asking if she'd come home, but she said no. She'd been at her boyfriend's place all night. Nervously, I went downstairs to investigate. Her apartment was just as I'd left it. Nothing was out of place, and there was no sign of anything that could have caused the noise I'd heard. I'd like to think I imagined the whole thing, but the voice, the sound, it all felt too real. I've never hallucinated before, and I don't have any sleep disorders. The alternative explanation, though, is far more unsettling. I was left home alone a lot as a kid. My mom was single for much of my upbringing and worked as an RN with a tough schedule. My older brother had already gone away to college, so it was often just me at home. One night, my mom was working an overnight shift. It was a weekend, and I had invited a girl, Molly, over. We were talking and hanging out, watching a couple of movies. Eventually, Molly had to leave because her parents didn't like her staying out late, so I was left alone to hold down the fort. After she left, I continued watching TV in my room, which was upstairs and faced the backyard. While lying in bed, I heard the sound of someone dragging one of the chairs on the deck outside. I got up, went to the window, and looked down. There was someone sitting on one of the deck chairs. At first, I thought it was Molly, as she had only left about 10 minutes earlier. I called out her name, but the person looked up at me, and it wasn't her. Panicked, I quickly moved away from the window and hid. It wasn't anyone I recognized, not that I could tell in the darkness. Nervous, I texted a few close friends in our group chat to ask if one of them was trying to mess with me. The ones who responded all said no and asked what I was talking about. Deep down, I didn't think any of my friends would actually come to my house to scare me. Still scared but curious, I slowly crept back to the window and peeked outside again. The man was still sitting in the chair, staring up at my window. He had clearly seen me. My heart sank. I moved away from the window again and turned off the TV, retreating to my bed. I sat there in the dark, curled up with my arms around my knees. I didn't even want to turn on my phone screen, afraid that the light would give away my location. I sat motionless, hoping he'd think I wasn't in the room anymore. After what felt like 5 long minutes, I decided to look out the window again. I hoped he had left, but when I looked, he was still there. My stomach churned as I realized he hadn't moved, still sitting there, still staring. This time, I forced myself to be brave. I leaned out the window and called down, "What do you want?" At that moment, his shoulders began to shake, as though he was laughing hysterically. But there was no sound, just the eerie sight of his body convulsing. Then, I heard a faint whistling sound, like he was wheezing from laughing so hard. Terrified, I begged him to leave. He didn't respond, so I backed away from the window and returned to my bed, trembling. For some reason, I was too scared to call the police. I left my room and crept to the top of the stairs, trying to listen for any sounds. That's when I heard the back door rattling. He was trying to get inside. My heart raced as I bolted back to my room and hid again. I was only 14, small and defenseless. I didn't know what to do. A few moments later, I heard him at the front door, trying to force it open. Thankfully, he gave up quickly. I rushed to close my bedroom window and draw the curtains, terrified of what might happen if he got inside. I didn't leave my room again until my mom came home around 9 a.m. When I told her what had happened, she was furious that I hadn't called 911. Looking back, I realize how stupid that decision was. It's one of the many mistakes I made when I was younger that I deeply regret.